Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Liz Robertshaw. I'm the Executive Director of the IWLCA, the Association for Women's College Coaches. And I am so thankful for all of you that are here, that are joining us for this really great topic. I am even more thankful for the two families that are joining us, who I'm going to introduce to you because they are way more important than I am. But this is an opportunity, we feel like, to share some knowledge, to answer some questions, to help you as parents as well as you as student athletes to navigate through the relationship of being a student athlete and parent in this process, because we know it's challenging. But thank you for joining us. There are a lot of things you could be doing on your Tuesday night, although during these somewhat stay-at-homes, you're not doing nearly as much as you used to. So, welcome to something to do on Tuesday night. So I'm going to introduce our guests. I'm going to ask, if you're on this and you're not our guests, that you are on mute. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. You can raise, I don't think you can raise your hand. Maybe you can. I'm not that good at Zoom, but you'll be able to I'll answer your questions there. So I'd really like to only have like the Cummings and the Ohlmillers who I can hear. But I do want to introduce our people first. You will see as they start talking, you'll get to see their faces if you don't already. But we do have Kylie Ohlmiller and her mom, Colette. So they're right there, little wave. Hello. We have Taylor Cummings, who is socially distancing from the rest of her family. Obviously, she want to be with her family. We do have her parents, Michael and Carol, and we have her sister, Kelsey, also a Terp. So we have a sea wolf and two Terps here joining us. And how we're going to look to kick this off is I'm going to ask them to share some different things that they've gone through in their journey, both as student athlete and then just athlete, because now we have some professional athletes and we also have, former athletes, and then as parents, because obviously we're trying to hit a lot of different facets right here. But again, as we go through this process, soak it all in. It's a great opportunity right here to listen to some amazing women. I could tell you all their accolades. Literally, I listed them and my hand got tired. So between Tourtons and All-Americans and World Cup gold medals and NCAA scoring records, I mean, it's a laundry list of amazingness. National champions in there too. So they're great, but their parents are even better. So I'm going to kick things off with Taylor Cummings, who's going to give a little bit of a background on herself before we head over to Kylie. So Taylor, you're up.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday. Just going to introduce myself a little bit. My name is Taylor Cummings. I went to the University of Maryland, graduated in 2016. Still playing on the U.S. team. I've been on the U.S. team since 2013 and am now on the WPLL fight with Kylie. So I have been playing for upwards of, I think, almost 20 years, which is crazy.
You're old.
I'm so old now. I grew up in Maryland, started, playing multiple different sports. I played soccer, basketball, and lacrosse through my senior year of high school. Picked up lacrosse around, third grade, I think, started a rec league. Went to, the travel league where I made B team and eventually made A team later on while I was playing soccer and basketball, and ended up playing for club at M&D. I'm pretty sure I saw Scott Robinson, who was my club coach, on this. Hey! Played for him. My parents are thrilled. Played for him from 6th grade on for M&D, which was one of the top club programs in Maryland. Went on to play at McDonough, which was one of the top high schools in Maryland for Scott's brother, Chris. And then eventually went to Maryland for my 4 years at college. So I've been playing lacrosse for a while, played at a pretty high level throughout the years, seen a lot, met some great players and great coaches, and been really fortunate to play and to learn from some of the best even still today. So really excited to be here. Thanks for jumping on, and hope we can help you guys kind of navigate this process, hopefully as easy as we did. Kylie?
All right. You're up. We're popcorning it over to me. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Kylie Ohlmiller. I have pretty much a kind of similar story to Taylor, actually, now that I'm listening to it, except mine's the Long Island version, not the Maryland version. So I grew up on Long Island in New York. I started playing lacrosse when I was in 3rd grade as well. Grew up in a very athletic family. We played all sorts of sports growing up. soccer, basketball, volleyball, lacrosse. And I ended up starting to play for the Long Island Yellow Jackets. I played for a bunch of awesome coaches there, under Coach Carol Rose and her dynasty there. So 9 years on a Yellow Jackets team for summers and summers, and some of the best memories. I went on to play at Stony Brook University, where I graduated in 2018. Played there for 4 years, again, under some awesome coaches and for some great teammates. And I now play for the WPLL fight with Taylor, and am a member of the training team for Team USA. So again, have had all sorts of amazing experiences through this sport that we all share a common love for, whether we're players, whether we're parents, whether we're coaches. And I think that it's really special that everybody has a different journey. So I hope that something about, my journey, Taylor's journey, our parents and our families' journeys can help you guys through some of this craziness that's going on right now, sometime on this call today. So thanks for being here.
Kelsey, are you adding in, or you can give me a thumbs down if you don't want to speak right now?
I can add in. I guess my story starts very similar to Taylor's, other than I was terrible at basketball and played field hockey instead of soccer. So I had two sports kind of growing up and through high school. I was on JV my freshman year of high school, and then made varsity my sophomore year, and then was there for 3 years before I went to Maryland for the past 4 years, and I graduated May of last year. So
Awesome. So we'll keep it in the family. We'll keep it right here with you guys, for the Cummings fam. So thoughts on just kind of your journey, your process, as parents, just kind of that overview of how it's been having the two daughters, going, like, just how they got started, and just, again, we'll keep it pretty vague, but just your journey.
So I think what was interesting for us is we weren't really sure what lacrosse was all about. I grew up in upstate New York. Carol grew up in Virginia. So lacrosse was not something that we grew up in. And while I played soccer in college, saw what it was like to play Division I, knew it was the equivalent of a full-time job while you're also trying to be a student. And also realized that not only is it a big commitment for the student athletes at high school level and college, but also that they actually needed to get a job when they graduated. And so for us, sports was always something that we loved and we were very supportive of, but we also knew that the girls needed to find their own passion. That may have turned out to be sports, it may have been music, it may have been chess, it may have been something else. And so I think what we tried to do, and Taylor and Kelsey will have to say whether we were successful or not, is really trying to let them find their own way, trying to support them in whatever way they chose, making sure that whatever they decided to do, they decided to give their all, because work ethic was something that was always very important, but you had to love it. And if you didn't love it, it didn't matter what Carol wanted, what I wanted. We sort of had our chance coming up, and we made whatever we made of it, but it was really up to the girls to kind of decide what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it.
Mrs. Cummings, anything to add on there?
No, I think we have two daughters, and they're not the same, and their passions are not the same, and you can't treat one exactly the same that you treat the other with, how you help them fulfill their passion. I think you try really hard to give them all the tools, but it's on them to use the tools and how far they want to take it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay, Ohlmillers, we're heading to the island. What about you? Mrs. Ohlmiller?
Hello, everyone. I have to agree with the Cummings. It really was about academics first, and then finding a good balance between all the sports that they love to play. Both of my daughters played 3 sports in high school, and I believe that helped balance and learn things for them, how to do their schoolwork. It's a busy life being an athlete, and schedules that they do all their academic stuff. So I think that the balance for them is figuring it all out, but for us to guide them any way that we can.
What did you think, and I'll start with you, Kylie, since we're there with you guys, What did you think when you were younger? So obviously there's different periods. There's periods of when you're kind of youth, whether it's rec league and club, there's college, and then now for you guys post-collegiate. But what do you think that your parents did so well? And don't worry, we might hit on the what not so well, but what did they do so well when you were younger? Like, how did they kind of feel that and fuel that passion, support you? Or what are some things when you were at that kind of that club, that high school, middle school, high school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, just going into that idea of making sure that we were doing it because we loved it, right? Making sure that we're there at practice because, we made the commitment to be there, to be on the team. When we said we wanted to try out, when we said we wanted to do all these things, like that was a big thing for us. It was, okay, you want to make the commitment, like you have to make the commitment. So that those kinds of lessons kind of resonated with us going forward. And again, just kind of putting your all into it when you're out there too was something that I remember was a little bit of a struggle for me, was just kind of being out there. And sometimes I'd take it for granted. Sometimes I'd just kind of be out there to be out there, and I'd come off the field and it was like, hello, like, aren't you supposed to be out there to be putting your all out there, right? Like give your 100% effort every single time you're out on the field. So that was another lesson that was something all growing up that, my parents both really instilled in me was, every time you're out there, it's a privilege. It's something that you work really, really hard towards. Definitely don't take advantage of it. So I think, those were some things that definitely have stuck with me to this day. And when you look back on it and you're kind of like, wow, why was I doing things like that? So I think just those little lessons that as a 12, 13-year-old girl at the PAL at the club level, like you try to push away, you try to like not really listen to. Now as a 23-year-old, kind of looking back on it, it's things that I'm starting to say to some of the girls that I train, right? Or some things that parents are starting to ask me about. And I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, I wish I had listened a little bit earlier, So I think it's those kinds of little things, the underlying things where, it might seem annoying in the moment, but they're teaching you those larger life lessons that can be used in sports and also in life later on down the line.
How many times did you think you had to tell Kylie and Taryn that of like, let's go? Like how many of those conversations were happening? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
It was more Taryn than me. Not here to defend herself, but all right, let's not throw her under the bus. There was definitely different time frames, for different, Kylie and I used to butt heads a lot when she was in middle school and high school. So when I would try and tell her something, she might not have listened to me so much as my husband. They had a better relationship, like an on-field relationship. They always spoke about how she was playing in any sports, volleyball, basketball, or lacrosse. They always had those one-on-one conversations. I was more there for the support and the organization skills.
I love it. What about you, Taylor? What about thinking back with when you were in your younger moments at McDonough and, with M&D and all that with your parents?
I feel like it's very similar to what Kylie just said, even down to the parental relationships. Like my mom and I would butt heads, and my dad was always the guy that I would like talk X's and O's to. And I don't know if that's just because he played sports. I don't know, but that's how it was. But I think the big thing that my parents never made me play. Like at the beginning of a season, they were never like, you have to play, you have to do this, you have to try out. That was never their forte. It was always, if you love it and you want to go for it, like we will do everything we can to make it possible. But once I made that commitment, I had to go to practice. I had to go to games. I had to go to tournaments. There wasn't like, it was either like you're in it, you're committed to your team, you're committed to your coaches. We're going to make these sacrifices for you, so you need to be fully invested. Or, okay, you don't have to do it. So I think that kind of mindset of like not only being committed to a sport, but being committed to my teammates and realizing that my ability to show up and be present and give my all affected not only myself, but so many other people. I see it now as a coach where, kids come to practice and they slack off, and it makes me mad because, we're there sacrificing our time and we want to help them get better. And as a young kid, 12, 13, I didn't really think about that. I didn't, poor Scott, Coach Scott right there. He probably got, a couple really lazy practices from me. But I think, the big thing for me, lacrosse was where I was super passionate. So I never felt like going to practice was hard for me for lacrosse. Soccer is where, I feel like I had the more of the conversations like, why are you slacking off? Why are you not running? Like I got a lot of these on the sidelines, like, let's run, come on, like, let's go. But, I think for me, middle school and high school was like my chance to find my passion and to find my confidence. And for me, I found it through sport and through not just lacrosse, but soccer and basketball. And, my parents saw the positives in team sports and really helped me fulfill all of my dreams, but it was never them pushing me. They just had my back and fully supported me, but it was never them making me do anything, which I think, playing at a high level where there's a lot of pressure, if they hadn't made me do things, I'm not sure I would have loved it as much.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of a word that you said that kind of struck with me for the parents, especially out there, you said the term sacrifice. So going to the parents, how'd you balance it? Like, how did you kind of make those balances of sacrificing, whether it's sacrificing family vacations or making your family vacation out of traveling to Richmond, Virginia, or traveling, to New Jersey for a tournament, or traveling across the world, to a World Cup? What happened? How did you guys feel about that?
Okay. I think lacrosse became our vacations. It became, everything. I mean, I still get argument from my parents who are in their 80s about why, even 3 years ago, why we couldn't come for the weekend because Kelsey had a game. We're going to it. So I think it just has to. We definitely sacrificed time, but we were always together, and so it may have been a sacrifice, but it was family time also.
Yeah, I didn't feel that it was a sacrifice either because we were always together. We were lucky enough because the two of them were 2 years apart that most of the tournaments, we were all together, the four of us, whether even if we weren't at each, like one of us would go to the other's games or whatever, we would all be basically in the same state together. So we were able to then wind up maybe having dinner together at the end of the night or back at the hotel together. So maybe we sacrificed Caribbean vacations or something like that, but we made the best of going to Ocean City, Maryland, or the Jersey Shore or something like that. We made the best out of every opportunity.
Did you guys have, and this is for obviously anyone here, were there stressful moments as you kind of went into that club scene? I like the smile right there. We got a smirk already, which tells me yes, stressful moments. As you kind of got older and you were in the high school, and then things start to get about recruiting, and they start, where are we looking at colleges and what's happening? How is the stress? How is managing the stress from the parent perspective? Because we know the girls are under stress, and we can definitely talk about that too, and how parents can help. But what about for you parents? Like, what was it like going through that process with all of you?
I would say, well, obviously it's all stressful for them and for us, but to make sure that they are happy and healthy is the end result out of all of it. And to give them the opportunity to let them be who they are and be where they want to be. And they have to figure that out on their own, and hope that we did our jobs as they got to 9th, 10th grade to figure that out themselves and ultimately be happy and healthy in the end.
What about that in Maryland?
The part of the stress was less to do with anything that Taylor or Kelsey were going through, but more to do with there are some crazy parents out there. There are some crazy coaches out there.
Scott.
At the youth level, not Scott. At the youth level, even at the college level. Mm-hmm. And so what was probably the toughest part of going through the whole process was trying to understand, number one, what is the process? Yeah. And number two, knowing that college was really, really important, but it's 4 years and no one comes out of women's lacrosse or men's lacrosse or soccer and goes and signs a $20 million contract and a shoe deal and is set for the rest of their lives. So while
Not
college,
yet, Mr. Cummings.
not yet,
yet.
not yet, but not for Taylor and Kelsey, put it that way. It may come for others. But part of it was trying to figure out, the stressful part was trying to figure out where could your kids go and be happy? Where could they go and meet whatever dreams and challenges they wanted to take on? Get a good education, knowing when they graduated, they actually had to go find a job. And to make sure that when they finished their 4-year college career, that they were in fact healthy and happy. And so it was sort of navigating through all of those different things to try and make sure that they found a place that they would be comfortable at, that wasn't going to hurt them, but rather nurture them, and that they could then end up after graduation getting a job. Because Carol and I love Taylor and Kelsey to death, but we really want them out at some point.
Coming from the girl that still lives at home.
Yeah. How is it? I don't. Part of it's how is it different? And I know you both have. We both have 2 younger sisters. One with us, Taryn. We don't want to get on her too much, and she, like you said, she can't defend herself. But how is it different? You know, was the stress the same? Was the process the same? Was it a little bit different? How is it even for you, Kelsey, in terms of like, you know, are you getting dragged to some things that you don't like? There's always that sibling that's there, like, am I really at this tournament? Am I really watching Taylor play again? Like, yes. Like, how did you guys feel like you managed that as parents as best you could? And even Kelsey, how do you feel like they managed that?
Well, I got a DS. For
Nintendo.
my Nintendo DS.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Yeah.
Am I still going?
Yes.
I mean, I definitely was dragged to like most of her games. I mean, it helps kind of watching her play and watching her team play to kind of get a feel for like things that I could always be working better at, and kind of like use her as this like role model and like someone that I could aspire to be. As far as like the recruiting process goes, I mean, having Taylor Cummings as my older sister was a challenge at points. We are definitely different people, and I had different goals going into the whole recruiting process. For me, it was more of, I wanted to be close to home. I wanted to like be around people that I knew I was going to be comfortable with. And I mainly wanted to go to a school that had a good like business school. So those are kind of my priorities going into recruiting. And honestly, going into it, my first thought was, I don't want to go to Maryland because I don't want to go where my sister is. And then after being around all the coaches and kind of going to all their games and being around her teammates, like I also fell in love with the school and the program, and just kind of like being around her and seeing how close my family was and having them be at the sidelines for everything. That was kind of like the moment where I realized that I also wanted to go to Maryland. And I think it was definitely a different process. I vividly remember me calling Kenneth and saying, I don't want to go. I don't think I'm ready to make a decision. Then having a 5-minute conversation with Taylor, and then immediately calling Kenneth back and committing. But it was definitely a process that was around my priorities. Mm-hmm. I think having them, like, they already went through the process with my sister. They kind of knew the way to navigate it, but they never pressured me to go to certain schools and look at certain schools, and they kind of supported me in my decisions, but they never tried to force me one way.
Did you guys as parents think it was there were any like big distinct differences or challenges with dealing with siblings going through process? Because obviously they both had different processes. Same thing in terms of obviously with Taryn and Kylie, is that they were different, different in how it happened. Did you guys as parents find that was challenging? Was it kind of like, oh, we've been through this once, it's easier the second time around? Or was it just different? Either one of you guys can go. I'm not going to tag somebody.
for us, one thing that I spent a lot of time Taylor's freshman year when she was playing, kind of, I knew Kelsey had a list of schools that she was interested in. And I watched the coaches, and you watch the sidelines, and you kind of see, do a lot of people get in? Do a lot of people not get in? Do people look happy? Do they look scared? Do they look like they're not paying attention? And so, right off the bat, you can point to, oh, I don't want my kid to go there. I just don't think that is going to be a really good place for her, maybe emotionally, like, she might not be able to handle that person screaming at her all the time like that. You just kind of look at different things. I mean, so going through it the second time, you definitely have the benefit of having gone through it the first time. And, did you make mistakes? Do you wish you'd done this different? But you have to take each one by, your kid and their priorities. And is it a passion? Is it something that they love? Or is it a vehicle that they're using to get into a school that they may not have gotten into otherwise?
So before I let you off the hook and head to Long Island, since you brought it up, I'm going to get you on this one. What do you think is maybe a mistake that you made in the process, or something you wish you had done differently?
For us, I think I would have pushed Kelsey to, we knew the challenges with her going to Maryland, and, anytime you go to a school that's, top 10, top 20, you're not guaranteed any sort of playing time. But at that point, I mean, she committed to Maryland a year and a half, 2 years earlier than Taylor committed at the same, Kelsey committed in between freshman and sophomore years, and Taylor was, she was a junior. Wow. So it made a difference. Like, I wish that we had the rules now back where they can't really wait till their junior year. I mean, she went through like incredible growth spurts. I mean, physically, she went from being like, 5'5" to 5'11" in like a year. And, so there's all kinds of things that, I wish that we had made her take more time. We didn't tell her, you got to do it now, but we definitely didn't stop her.
Yeah, I get that. Mrs. Ohlmiller, how about you? I guess down there, I'm in Boston, so down there for where you guys are. How was your process going through? Obviously, you had the two girls. Were there big differences right there? How did you feel like things went for you in that respect?
I think the recruiting process itself was similar, but like Carol had said, they're both different girls, different personalities, want different things from the schools, from the program, academically and athletically. So at first, like I said before, Kylie and I butt heads. So when she told me she wanted to stay home and go to Stony Brook, it took me probably 2 weeks to believe that she actually was staying around here.
She literally said to me, I was on the phone with Joe Spallina, and I was like, Mom, I think I'm going to commit. And she was like, no, you're not.
I was really surprised. Like, I thought she wanted to go as far away as possible. So when she spoke to me and told me exactly why and the picture he painted for her and everything like that, then I understood. But I was surprised she was staying home. But then as Taryn committed, she committed early, also like Kelsey. I think it was the beginning of 10th grade. And maybe she wasn't ready yet to commit either. She ended up decommitting after she saw how happy her sister was in the environment at Stony Brook, that she was away, but yet could be home in 40 minutes for maybe a Sunday dinner or to see her puppy. So that became a difference. And, it all goes back to personalities and what they're going to take from the situation in the end, really.
Was there anything that you learned in the process of going through it, since you went through it twice, that you learned as a parent going through the process that would be helpful for some of the parents going through it now? Obviously, we know we're in a pandemic. Things are crazy. We're not out on the fields recruiting, which everyone wishes they were. But in the recruiting process, the talking to coaches, the visits, the watching your daughter sift through what school she's looking at, are there things that you kind of said, I wish we had known this, or I wish we did this differently? And this could be for both of you guys, because I think hindsight is 2020, and you can look back and say, gosh, I wish I had, whether it's taken my time or talked to more coaches or asked these questions or didn't ask these questions because they didn't go well. I don't know if there are things you feel like you may have learned.
I just think that when their teammates from their travel teams were all committing, I think that made them very anxious to commit themselves,
Mm.
and maybe it rushed them a little bit more than they should have been rushed. So I think, keeping an open mind for the player and the parent in a situation of where they're going, and taking some extra time to really see if that's exactly it, not to feel pressured.
What about for you, Kylie? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I know exactly what feeling she's talking about. It's that FOMO feeling that happens in a lot of other social situations too. But imagine as a lot of us are on this call, a teenage girl, and everyone around you is doing the thing that you've looked so much forward to doing, right? And everyone's doing it before you, and it just makes you want to kind of rush through the process. It makes you kind of want to be like, all right, like I want to get all the visits done in this week, and I want to make sure that I talk to this coach, this coach, whereas like there's no rush, and I think that I wish that I could have, even though people were telling me that, I wish I could have actually taken it to heart. There's really no rush. Everybody's got a different journey. Everybody's got a different time frame. I think I really finally realized that, not even after I committed, but after my sister had decommitted from a different school and ended up recommitting to Stony Brook. Like that's when it became real for me, where it was, if she had taken just a little bit of extra time, or if we had kind of, if she didn't feel that pressure, whatever it might have been for her, maybe that would have been a one-time thing. And maybe she wouldn't have had to go through that stressor of having to decommit, recommit, all the different things like that. So I think that's when that became a reality for me. But I do wish that pressure wasn't such a huge factor in wanting to get the entire recruiting process done. Because, again, it's that FOMO feeling. You have fear of missing out.
Mhm.
And you're not going to miss out on anything. Your time is coming. It might be a different time than everybody else's, and that's totally okay, because you're going to find your place.
So Taylor, I've had you kind of waiting in the wings a little bit. You are now, for those on this call who don't know, you coach high school. So, you are a high school coach. You are around these girls that are in this age that have this stress. You see the parents, that are going through these stressful moments, and as they're figuring out schools and process and things like that. What did your parents do well? Because obviously you heard they had some stress in there, of what the crazy parents that were next to them, or their own feelings of making sure you guys got to follow your passion. What do you feel like, they did well that you'd love to see from the parents that you're around and helping them?
Well, I think the first thing that not only my parents, but I think my whole M&D team's parents did really well was they didn't talk to each other about our processes. So everyone's process was private, and they weren't going to tournaments being like, oh, well, Taylor's getting recruited by UNC and Maryland. And, oh, well, my kid's Florida and Notre Dame. Like, there was none of that. It was just like a general consensus among the parents of our M&D team. Like, whatever your kid decides, first of all, we love your kid. That's amazing. Like, your kid committing somewhere doesn't take anything away from my daughter. I'm happy for your daughter. I was very fortunate to be in a program and coached by a coach who kept things private, who created a community where, it wasn't jealousy. It wasn't, oh, she's taking something I want. It was, that's amazing. You've worked your butt off for this. Like, congratulations. And no one really talked about recruiting until you committed. Like, I know with me, like my best friend Corinne, she was the only person who knew kind of where I was, where I was talking, where I was thinking. She sat there with me and, made our pros and cons together. And we ended up not going to having the same schools. Initially we did, and, we whittled it down, but I think the first thing is I wish parents would keep their processes between themselves and their family. It's not a public display of like how amazing your kid is. Like, it's their decision. And by keeping it, like, whenever I talk to my rising juniors, I'm like, you choose your circle. It can be, I as your coach can be in your circle. If you don't want me in your circle, that's fine. I support you. But like, you need to choose a small circle of people that you're going to talk to about this. And then once you commit, there's nothing. That's the other thing, is then kids commit and they're like ashamed, or like, oh, I don't want to hurt so-and-so's feelings. Like, that's something to be really proud of. So I think, keeping it private, and then once you're committed, you're not like blasting it out on Instagram, but you can talk about it. It's fine. But I do wish parents would keep it to themselves and not make it like a popularity contest amongst their club teams and high school teams. But I think the big thing, you know, I wish the thing my parents did really well is that they, first of all, made me wait. So I wanted to commit in June before September 1st. I went on my Maryland visit and I was like, I'm it, like, that's it. I'm done. Like, let's go. And my parents were like, hold up. Like, this could be like first dress feeling where like, you're just excited. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. And so they made me wait for September 1st. And I talked to more coaches and I went on a couple of visits. And I think, you know, some parents really get jump happy, like commit happy. And they're like, nope, you like it, go for it. And I'm really thankful that my parents made me wait, made me go on visits, ask certain questions. And that helped me be really sure. So I think my parents did a great job in this process. You know, I was like Kylie, like we were some of the highest recruits in our class. We had a lot of emails come in. They sat me down. They kept me organized. My dad helped me. He didn't write my emails, but he certainly looked them over. He still does sometimes. But the really important ones, but they kept me organized, but it was my process that they kept to themselves, and they just kind of helped me along the way. So I think being a high school coach, I wish parents would just be that support system. And I think a lot of times, you know, talking to my kids, they get really stressed, and a lot of the stress is coming from their parents and the pressure their parents are putting on them. Whereas I never felt that, and I'm very grateful.
Do you think, and maybe you don't know this answer, so maybe, I don't know, Mr. or Mrs. Cummings, if you know it, was that kind of not talking about your process? Was that kind of instilled from, you know, from Chris or Scott Robinson? Or
it was definitely instilled from Scott. I was going to jump in with that. He sat all the parents down pretty early into the process and said, don't talk about it. Just, you know, just keep it to yourselves. I also want to say that one of the things that he really helped with, and I would recommend it, when she got down to her last few schools, he suggested talking to a recent graduate. They don't have anything to lose.
Yep.
You know, they can tell you you know, whether they loved it, whether they didn't. They'll give you the down and dirty. You know, they're not still fighting for playing time. And I think that really helped her figure out from, you know, make that last jump.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's great. So if there are coaches on here, you know, the fact that, was it Chris or was it Scott? Scott for high school? Okay. So the fact that their coaches did that, it's huge. It just shows that kind of, again, you set boundaries. This is what we're going to do. And I think you can see it obviously paid off, which is great. With that, I want to jump to something that no one loves talking about, but I think it's really great for parents, because I feel like this is a question that I got a ton when I was coaching. When something disappointing happens, you know, you're on JV and you don't make the varsity team, you get cut, you know, to US trial, you don't win, you know, something that whether it's a national championship, a quarterfinal match, like you have that moment. From a player perspective, what did you need of your parents? And for the parent perspective, what did you feel like was your role, and how could you just help? Because obviously you wanted them to win that. You wanted them to make that team. You want, as a parent, I know that because I have a 3-year-old, and I want them to be able to climb the slide without falling. Like, I want it, but I can't do it for them. What do you think in those disappointing moments that maybe, you know, Taylor, Kylie, and Kelsey had, that you guys felt like as parents, you had to be like, okay, this is my role. This is how I handle it.
I think, you know, what my parents did a really good job of was like, we joke about, you know, we used to butt heads in high school and stuff like that. Anything disappointing that happened, like, they would really give me my space to kind of deal with it on my own. And at the same time, when they recognized that I would come to them about it, you know, I would start to talk to them about it. That was when, you know, they started to be like, hey, like, you worked so hard for this, your time is going to come, right? I don't know necessarily why this is happening right now or why it's happening to you, but I know that every challenge that you've gotten through up until this point, you've conquered and you've made it to this point, right? So just kind of those little reminders in a time, like a low time in life, whether it was a tryout that didn't go out the right way, whether it was a big loss in a game, whatever it was, I knew that they were there to give me my space to deal with it the way that I needed to. And then ultimately they were also there when, you know, I hit my breaking point and I needed that shoulder to cry on. I needed that reassurance to be able to get back out there and kind of attack the next goal and the next thing of what it was. So I was grateful for that because, and still am grateful for that because that's happening still at this level, you know, it happens at every level of everything. And I'm grateful that they're there for me in that way and that they understand that that's how I need to grieve, but then I also need that support to lift me back up. So super grateful for them understanding me in that way.
And Mrs. Ohlmiller, I mean, obviously having been in some, like seen some of those moments, like, are there moments as a parent you like want to just scream? You're like, what are you guys doing? Or what are you doing, coach? Or how could this decision be made? Like, how do you handle that? Because as you say, how do you go from being a calm, rational parent to being like keeping away from the crazy parent that we don't want?
We were always the very quiet parents down at the other end. We try not to talk to anyone. It just made things easier. We could, like you said, like Taylor said about keeping the whole recruiting thing to yourselves. It was just easier to not speak, and you know, and everybody thinks their kid is great. That's a good thing, but you don't need to talk to other people about it or the things they're doing bad or scream at them on the field or anything like that. We always just had her back, you know, I would let her take it on herself. And then, like she said, when she was ready for some support from us, then we would give it to her. Mm-hmm. It was a journey for her to figure out some of it out on her own, but we were always there to have her back.
How about down there in Maryland? How about the Cummings fam? Oh, I like that, Kylie. Good job. Little pat on the back, Mom.
We don't butt heads anymore.
For me, I think one thing that I was really, I got cut from U19s. I was on the B team and travel. Like I definitely got cut throughout my years. And I think one of the things that I'm really grateful for my parents for is they never made excuses. They were never like, oh, the coach hates you, or, oh, like better luck. Like when I didn't make it, there was never like the angry phone call to a parent, like to the coaches. They didn't go screaming and crying to other parents. It was like, okay, what did we do wrong? Like, what do we need to improve on? How can you get better so that next time you can improve and accomplish that goal? And so I think, that really helped me as a kid realize, like my parents are there for me. Like they felt bad for me, but they weren't certainly going to go make excuses for me and go try to, have the board vote to put me on the team. Like that just wasn't ever going to happen with them. You get what you earn and you work for it. And I think that was something that my parents really instilled in me from a young age. But for me also, like similar to Kylie, like I never dreaded the ride home, like the car ride home that so many kids are like, oh God, I'm going to get in the car and my dad's going to scream at me. First of all, I don't know if I've ever heard my dad scream at me. Sometimes I wish he would. The disappointed dad, that's the worst. But like I know when I have a bad game, and I knew from a young age when I had a bad game. So if I wanted to get the criticism, I'd be like, so like, how do you think I played? And they'd be like, not your best. And I'd be like, okay. But I never got like punished or yelled at or like felt bad about myself. It was like, well, here are things you can continue to work on. Like if you want to get home, we'll go juggle 100 soccer balls. We'll go hit the wall. Like my dad and mom didn't play lacrosse. They threw the ball with me. But I think like I never dreaded the ride home. It was either supportive or it was constructive. And it wasn't yelling. I never got upset. I never left the car crying. And I think, for me, I'm very close with my parents still. And still, I'm 25, they'll look at me and be like, not your best, but like good effort, like great try. And I think that's a really important relationship to have with your kids where, I never, like for me, I feel so bad for my high school kids when I know that they don't do well in a game, for instance, and I know their car ride home is going to be awful. Mm-hmm. And like, how do I, as a coach, pick up the pieces tomorrow? Because, they're going to be upset. And I think being positive and finding ways to support your kid and help them through it and not make them feel bad about it. I already feel bad when I play bad. I feel like I left my team down. That's when we need our parents to kind of pick us up and support us.
Did you feel, Mr. and Mrs. Cummings, did you feel that there were ever moments that you wanted to say something, whether, again, a game wasn't good or, you coming back from that U19 trial? And I'm sorry I was part of that staff that, sorry. Not that I didn't like you. I promise. I didn't promise I didn't like, I liked you again later, so we're good. But for you, Cummings, were there those moments that you wanted to say something? And if there were, like, how did you stop yourself? Like, how did you stop and be like, stop, it's not about me? Like, how did you do that?
Bubble gum. No, seriously. When we would go to tournaments or whatever, I found if I had gum in my mouth, there was likely fewer words that would come out. And so that was important. And look, there are times when, as a parent, you don't understand why something happened. You don't understand why a decision was made, a call was made, why a coach did something. And Carol and I would be lying if we said that at any point in time, we didn't look at each other and go, so-and-so's an idiot. Like, how in heaven's name did they just decide to do that?
Not you, Scott.
But not Scott. But those were conversations we would have away from the field. Those were conversations we would have, quite frankly, away from Taylor and Kelsey. Mm-hmm. And we would kind of just talk it through and also recognize that, particularly when we're talking about lacrosse, Carol and I know nothing. Like, we know whatever we've seen happen, but we don't understand it. And so we also put a lot of faith in the people that were around Taylor and Kelsey that knew what they were doing. And we had a lot of faith in those coaches, even if we didn't think they were necessarily, certain of them, the best coaches. We knew they were good people. And so they weren't going to hurt our children. And we may question some of the decisions they made, but we needed to take that and deal with that away. Like, if we were the parents who were yelling, screaming, to Taylor's point, if we were making a bunch of excuses for why Taylor or Kelsey didn't make a particular team or whatever, that doesn't just hurt them in lacrosse. That becomes like a life habit. Because then you can make excuses for everything that ever happens to you that doesn't go your way in life. And lacrosse, in the grand scheme of things, is a small part of that. And so what we tried to do is, we were very empathetic when Taylor got cut from U19, or they lost 2 national championship games, or whatever the case was, or Kelsey didn't make varsity as a freshman, came home, she was crushed. But there's a difference between being supportive in the moment, being constructive, but then also saying, okay, so what are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. And by the way, you have to do something about it. Like, it's not me out there running wind sprints on a 100-degree day. It's not Carol out there having to get up early in the morning before class to go lift weights. So if you are not happy with what just happened, what are you going to do to have a different outcome? And I think that was a big part of it. Mm-hmm. And then we'd go running or do something and get really tired, so we didn't yell at anybody.
And I think, just to piggyback off that, something else that I really appreciated, my parents never talked about other players in front of me. Mm-hmm. And they never talked about coaches' decisions in front of me. They were never like, why did coach so-and-so do this? Like, oh, like, she had a horrible game. It was never like that. It was only about me and what I could do to help my team. But how can I continue to get better to help the greater outcome of our program? And I think, if we focus on ourselves and not other people, but focusing on ourselves to help the team be the best, like, we're in a team sport. You need, the 10 other people on the field. Like, I need Kylie scoring 5 goals, and I need, Marie McCole getting the draw, and Alice Mercer playing her best defense ever. Like, we need that. So it shouldn't be about bashing other players. It should be, okay, what can we do to help you continue to grow and help the team? And I think for me, not having parents who didn't make it about other people, but helped me with my personal growth for the team's benefit, helped me a lot.
That's awesome. Loved all, like, Mr. Cummings, I'm like, yeah, I believe. I'm with you. I want to shift gears. We do have a couple questions that I would love to get answered for some of the parents that have written. One of them has to do with, and again, I know as you guys are both aging so well, all three of you aging so well, but back during your recruiting process, what was, what kind of communication did you guys have as parents with the coaches? Like, when you were in, I know Taylor made a comment about asking some of those really good questions when you were in a meeting with Kathy. And I'm not sure if you, Ms. Ohlmiller, were in there with Joe. I don't know if you got a word in if you were, and I love Joe, so I'd say it right to him. What were some things that you thought went well, like having whatever communication you did, or even better yet, what kind of communication did you not have, with some of those coaches?
If you've ever listened to anything Kylie says on any of her things, she's a big list person, and that came from me. I'm a big list person also. So believe it or not, yeah, there it is. So believe it or not, I had a hidden list in my pocket when we went to see Spalina and had to run to the bathroom to review it to make sure that I got all my questions answered.
True story. Well, because I think the big thing is, right, like, as players and as parents, when you go into those meetings, before you're actually there, you have that list, you have your mindset, you know what you want to ask. When you actually get there, it's like everything goes blank because the coaches start to talk, because that's their job, right? They're ultimately trying to sell it to you. So, sometimes you forget those really important questions in the moment. And I think that's what, again, we're both obviously really big list people, but I think that was important, right? She had to go actually physically take a moment, step outside of the office to take a breath and be like, okay, what hasn't he touched on yet? Because we need to, before we leave, make sure that we understand the answers to this question, because this is the time that we're going to actually get those answers. And in order to make a really strong, well thought out decision on where Kylie wants to go to college, I need to know the answers to these questions. So I think that's just really important.
What were some of those questions that you felt like this is important to us in knowing? To make sure that Kylie's in the right spot.
I just put a list out like a couple of weeks ago. I should have didn't know. Well, definitely academics, because we wanted to know what her path was going to be when she left there. Like Mike Cummings was saying, lacrosse is lacrosse, but ultimately they need to have a goal and a vision for their future of what they're going to do business-wise. As a job. So that was one of my main things. Like, how is she going to fulfill what she wants to fulfill academically, so when she leaves here, she can get herself a job and make herself a better person?
Nice. How about for you, Cummings? How was a lot of talking with Kathy, a lot of not talking with Kathy? How did that process go with the girls?
Kathy, Kathy's great, and she's bubbly, and you knew when you went in there, and we always felt really strongly, like Mike said earlier, is she's not signing a $20 million contract when she gets out of college. So we wanted to know, academic support. What happens when they went away, when they had to go away games? How were they going to get their work made up? And just stuff like that. And also you want to make sure that they're going to make your kids better. I mean, it's not their job, but you want them to be good people that you're entrusting your children into for the next 4 years.
Yeah. Were there any things that kind of you wish you would have asked? I mean, obviously they both, all four daughters have had great careers and have great experiences, and they're, where they need to be. Are there things that you're like, wow, we never really asked that question that we probably should have asked, whether it was, I don't even know what you would ask. I'm not a parent there yet. But I feel like that's a question, like parents that have written, they're like, I plan on being on now it's not either going to meetings or having Zooms. So they're like sitting like this with a coach. And
Right.
Some of the parents are like, I don't even know what to say. Like, how do I make sure this is the right place for my daughter?
Well, I think what Carol said about academic support is a big deal. I remember, study halls and stuff like that, probably asking a lot of those questions, like, what if my daughter is struggling in one particular area? What kind of support will she have? What is there for her?
I think for me, one of the reasons I committed to Maryland was because when I asked a question like, what do you want your players to say when they leave? Like what are your goals for your players, you know, as they leave and look back? What do you want them to feel, and like what do you want them to say their experience is? And I'm not sure I asked that straight up. Like I think I asked a lot of like questions similar, like what's your team culture like? But I wish, you know, as I went on, you know, my visits, I wish I'd asked like, what do you hope your kids say about you? And what do you hope your kids say about this program? And I feel like some of them would have been like, I hope they say they won a lot of games and they, you know, had a great time. And that was important to me, but you know, there's other important things as well. And so I think I got that feeling the most from Maryland, probably without asking that question. And I'm sure Kylie kind of felt the same way about Stony Brook. I think that's an important question. Like, how do you want to be remembered? Like, what do you want your kids to say leaving this program? And, you know, I think Kathy said it best last year, you know, she wants us to look back and say they were the best 4 years of their lives. And I think that's an important thing to ask because, you know, when you play lacrosse, like lacrosse could be gone and you could, you know, get hurt. You could, for whatever reason, like not be on the team anymore, whatever it happens, like you want to make sure that where you're going is you like without lacrosse. And I think that helps when asking as well.
And something kind of along that, you know, especially for the parents, knowing the stress that kind of did go along, not only with the process, although that's a big stress, but also with college and with everything going on. What do you feel either from what you guys as players felt like your parents did for you, or what your parents did, like, or what you thought, how could they make it more enjoyable? Like if they knew you were struggling, like let's say you hit that, I don't want to say burnout factor, but like if you hit a rut, what did you guys look for? Like, how did your parents help if you ever had those? Or like from a parent perspective, if you see your kids in a rut, that was a question that came up. Like, I feel like I see my daughter in a rut right now. And part of it's probably the environment that we're in. I think this is challenging for so many young people. What are ways as parents, or even as you guys, what you would need from your parents to kind of get you out of that?
Well, Taylor and Kelsey hit that when they were in high school. Well, actually before high school, elementary school, where they both took time off from lacrosse. Yeah. They both just said, I'm kind of sick of it. I don't want to play it. And they stepped away and didn't play for a while. And for Kelsey, it was longer than it was Taylor to get back into it, but they just weren't enjoying it. They weren't having fun, and they just took a break. And sometimes you just need to step away. And step away may mean a season or two. Step away may be a weekend, or it may be a semester. But you know, that was something that I know both Taylor and Kelsey did, is they just felt like they were sort of burned out at a period of time, and they just stepped away for a little while to decide if they really liked it and if it was something that they wanted to get back into. And once they decided they missed it, then they stepped back in and really kind of went after it. But they both stepped away for a while, and they did it with other sports too.
Yeah, I think that's what I was going to say was August, yeah. It was right after the travel season and the hustle and bustle of every single weekend, and being in a different state and playing 6 games a weekend. I think it happened every August where we were just kind of like, I need to just not touch a lacrosse stick for at least a month now, or at least a couple months. And they were really awesome in letting us do that. They were like, you worked hard enough, like, okay, August is your month. We don't need to talk about lacrosse. We don't need to think about lacrosse. We don't need to, we can pick back up when you guys want to pick back up, because I think the best part about playing other sports was that we had those other seasons to look forward to. Once lacrosse season was over, we had that month of August to get ourselves just kind of mentally back into the swing of being children, being kids, being people, just that people in general. And then once, the fall season came around, we had volleyball to pay attention to. And I think that was refreshing for us, because by the time volleyball season was kind of closing out and we were starting to get into fall ball tournaments and on the lacrosse side, and you would start to pick up your stick every once in a while, because ultimately you started to miss it, right? Like, that's how it worked for me. I was playing volleyball 5-6 days a week. And I was like, maybe I'll go, hit the wall. Maybe I'll go get outside and start to shoot a little bit. And then you start to, like, for me, what happened was I recognized my passion for it all over again, every year at the same time, right? August, I was completely sick of it. Just needed to put my stick down. There was so many months in a row of just focusing on only lacrosse. Like, how many goals did you have? What kind of game did you have? What did you do wrong? What could you be doing better? August, I was at the beach. Stick was down, getting ready for volleyball season, football season, all the happy times. And then it was just funny. Like, I know as November started to roll around, I would have my stick in my hands more often. And it wasn't a necessarily planned thing. It was just because I had taken that step away from it in a different way.
I completely agree. I think playing multiple sports saved me, and it saves me from burnout. At McDonough, I still played soccer and basketball at very high level. Like, we were in championships, we were playing high level. I was with ODP girls and AAU girls, but for me, like, lacrosse was the sport I was getting recruited for. That's the one where you had to show up every weekend and play well and go to tournaments and go to camps and showcases. And for me, like, soccer, like, I tried really hard. I loved it. But if I screwed up, like, who cares? Like, I'm not getting recruited to go play soccer. I'm not getting recruited. Like, you guys should have seen my layups in basketball. It wasn't great. But, that was a place where, like, I got to be around new people. I got to be around new coaches. I got to play sports. I love to compete. So I still got to compete and feel that, like, competitive drive and spirit that I had, but in a much more relaxed environment where it wasn't so much like life or death. And then, same with Kylie, like, come fall ball, like, I'd be like, yes, like, I have a fall ball tournament this weekend. Like, I am pumped. Like, I miss my M&D team. I love my M&D team. I can't wait to get back. And then you kind of trickle away. And then spring would come and you're like, yes, I'm so excited for McDonough lacrosse. Like, I haven't played lacrosse in like 3 months. Like, oh my gosh, that's so long. And then you'd be into summer. And I think, when it was our off season, my parents never were like, did you get your reps in today? Like, did you go play wall ball? Like, did you go pass with your sister? Like, we didn't touch our sticks. And I think breaks are just as important as playing. And for me, it was like a rest period, and it got me to, like, shift to something else where I still had passion for it, but it wasn't so much like recruiting and, having to play my best all the time. And I think whether that's dance, whether it's art or chess or music, like, having a different outlet for my energy really helped me when lacrosse came and it felt so serious.
And it's huge. And I think we're in a challenging era where it's hard for kids to play multiple sports, but I think if you love playing it, fight for it, because those breaks are great. And same thing, parents, you may have to step in and kind of say to a coach, hey, club coach, I want them to play. This is where they want to go and be recruited, but she loves playing field hockey. We want her to play field hockey. We support her playing field hockey. We support her being at a playoff game. That's where we're supporting as a parent. And with that, I know we're hit just over 8:00, and I don't want to keep everyone's time, especially you guys. But for Mrs. Ohlmiller and obviously for the Cummings, last thoughts for you guys, like, just advice. And obviously I'll ask the girls this too. I'll have the different question for them, but just thoughts for the parents. Like, if you had advice to give the parents that are on here, because I'd love to say what you say to the daughters, they're going to hear, but your own daughters didn't listen. So I don't think the other daughters are going to listen to you. But thoughts for the parents, again, they're in this process. Their daughters are anywhere from middle school to high school to college, going to college. Any advice would be awesome. You've already given a ton, so I'm not saying you didn't do your work and you didn't do your job, but, last thoughts on that.
Just enjoy it. I mean, time goes by very quickly. We were saying, Carol and I were saying just yesterday, this is the first time in 7 years we haven't been to a Memorial Day lacrosse final for women's lacrosse. And it doesn't seem like it was that long ago that we had never been to one before. And then we went through a period where we couldn't imagine not being at one. And now we're done. And so, just enjoy it. And I know it seems like it's really, 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 really important. And it is, because it's your kids. But also know that it's not the end of the world, that you need to have a relationship with your kids long beyond their lacrosse playing days in college, and be supportive, challenge them, make sure they challenge themselves, but also know that you need to be there to support them, and your relationship's going to last a lot longer than club lacrosse, high school lacrosse, and college lacrosse.
Mrs. Cummings, anything to add on there?
No, he says it really well.
Tapping out, I like it. How about you, Mrs. Ohlmiller?
He did say that very well. The only thing I have to add to it is as serious as this all is, the most important thing in the end is that they're good people. Really, that's the most important part out of all of this. It doesn't matter what accolades they have and what happens if they're not a good person. So that's really what you can instill in them that's the most important thing, I believe.
Cool. And then for the women on the mix, and sorry I called you girls earlier, but for the women on here, for you guys, just the biggest thought of thanks to your parents, or what you're so happy. I mean, you've said a ton. You guys have definitely thanked them in a lot of ways, but I always love giving parents a little extra love for all the harm and pain in the butt times you were to them. So this is an opportunity for you guys again to, thank them, or anything about the process that you are appreciative of them for. Kylie, you're going to be up first since we're on the screen.
Love it. Okay. I think, she said it perfectly. We definitely butted heads as we were growing up. And I think that's something that happens a lot, especially with young female teenagers, right? Whether we're playing sports or not, it's just part of our nature to sometimes go back at our parents and just not believe anything they have to say, or if it's right for us, whatever it is. And I was definitely a major culprit of that. And what I'm so grateful for is them, guiding me and not pushing me, not, doing anything to make me kind of get out of that. Really, they just kind of let me go through it, and they let me really find myself in a way where it sounds kind of crazy, but throughout the recruiting process is where I found myself, right? I ended up finding a place that I could call home, that I could be myself. I could have my freedom, but I could also, be able to kind of come back and have their support at the same time. And she'll kind of attest to it, where when I first got to college, that's when our relationship became, really, really great. And that's when we stopped butting heads. And that's when it was, it kind of just came full circle. So I think I'm just really grateful for them allowing me to find my passion in lacrosse, find who I am through lacrosse, and be able to just kind of support me through the entire thing and all the lessons that they gave me growing up, without even having to say much, just kind of being there for me.
That's awesome. Taylor, I'm going to hit it to you.
I think through my process and my career, my parents have been, my biggest cheerleaders and my biggest supporters. They've been there at my highs. They've been there at my very lows. They've been there at the moments, when the pressure seemed too big and I felt like I couldn't do it without them. And then they were also there, silently in the background where, I didn't need them as much. And they helped me grow to a person where I was confident enough to go out and make decisions and, pick a school and try out for the US team and go onto a field confident and play in a World Cup and start my own business. And there's a lot of fear and a lot of nerves. And, I remember before my first game in the Dome, my freshman year against Cuse, I looked at my dad and he was like, holy God, Taylor's gonna throw up. She looked so nervous, but he gave me that thumbs up and he was like, you've got this. Like, he just had to give me a thumbs up and I was good. Mm-hmm. And so I think for me, like, my parents have been like my steady rock. They barely missed any games. I could call them after games, vent, yell, be upset, be excited, talk, and they've been my sounding board. And I couldn't be where I am today without them. But I also don't think my lacrosse journey would have been as fun or as memorable without them.
It's awesome. Kelsey, you're wrapping it up. You're like, great, it's ending on me. Oh my.
Here we go.
Come on, Kelsey, here we go.
Similar to Taylor, I mean, they've always supported me throughout all of my decisions. A little different is that my lacrosse journey was not as successful. I mean, had my failures, coming from someone who did not play that much in college. And I still loved going to practice, and I still loved being a part of the team. And I really took advantage of being on the left bench and getting the whole team kind of riled up and cheering for everyone. Yes, Taylor, I did enjoy my part. I think the biggest thing is kind of for parents and for girls is that even if they aren't as successful as Kylie and Taylor, getting them to a point where they find a team that they can still thrive and still enjoy every single moment, I think that's huge. I mean, I'd come off the games and be like, I didn't make a single mistake. My parent, and it was fine. But I think the biggest thing was that no matter what, they were supporting me, whether that was pushing me academically or pushing me to go in for extra reps and kind of practice the run test or something like that. Like, they were always there pushing me no matter what. And there are definitely times when I did not want to talk to them about lacrosse because I was already kind of like beating myself up over it. And they recognized that and they gave me my space. But when I went to them, they were willing to help me. So I think coming from someone who kind of had a different experience, but still had a great 4 years at Maryland, I think you really need to kind of support your kid no matter what and kind of recognize their priorities and put their priorities ahead of your own.
I mean, I think that's awesome. That actually wraps it up because, to be honest, of the 150 people that were on here throughout the time, there's going to be a 1% that's going to hit that level, you know, that Taylor, you've gotten to, Kylie, you've gotten to, and that I think we do a disservice when we don't talk about the 99% others, because they are just as valuable, and even more so because the people that are there supporting, the people that are busting their butt, loving the game, no matter if you get an accolade or not, are the ones that, as a coach, as a former coach here, like, those are the ones we love just as much, if not more, because it's harder in some ways for you to come to practice every day and love it. At the same time, there's a lot of pressure on that 1%, and it's hard for them. Everyone has their story, their successes, and they're tough times. So I think it's very valuable. But for me, I mean, one, I want to say thank you. Your daughters, Mrs. Ohlmiller and Cummings family, your daughters are amazing. Being lucky enough to having coached them for a little while with Team USA and be around them, you have raised amazing young women who I'm very proud to know and everything they do and how they champion, you know, gender equity and the game, and they move it forward. You have done a fantastic job, as has Joe and Kathy and all their staffs. It's been a joy, and I'm very thankful that you are all willing to spend your Tuesday with us. You know, from the parent perspective, it's hard. It's hard. I know I'm not even there yet, so I'll make sure to give you guys a call when the kids are about 15 years when they're there. But it's been, you guys, just from a coaching hat, from a personal hat, you both have done outstanding jobs with your daughters and everything they're doing. So congratulations to you guys. And I think that they're not even hitting their peak yet for what they're going to do after college, which is great to see. So I'll be cheering on, obviously, red, white, and blue, and your personal lives and professional lives and all that kind of stuff too. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm very, very, very thankful that we had you guys willing to do this. I hope everyone stays safe. You know, wherever you are, make good decisions, everybody. Let's get out of this. Let's get back on a lacrosse field as soon as humanly possible. Let's do it safely. Until then, obviously, I see two faces up there that are doing some great PLL training, so you can get your virtual reps in if you want to do it. But from the parent perspective, if they don't want to, don't push them. It's got to be their passion. You heard that. Ohlmiller's, Cummings, you heard it here first. It's got to be your kid's passion. But thank you to everyone. And again, we look forward to seeing you on the field, and I can't wait to see both of you, not only in red, white, and blue, but WPLL. Let's get you guys back out there. Let's get you guys promoting and doing your thing, because you're so fun to watch. You are so fun to watch out there, and I can't wait to see you play again. So
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great night.
Bye, Taylor. Probably see you tomorrow.
Bye, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Thanks.